Teaching others what you've learned is the only way to develop whatever your craft is. It helps you to understand that your way might have some flaws. Our knowledge doesn't just belong to us, it belongs to everyone. And I feel like failing to share those things is the most selfish way to live. We can give out products, we can give out things, we can give out money, and it may be difficult, but you can always make those things back. We can never get back this time. So this time that you spend with a student to help them develop, or this time that you spend with a mentee to help them get better, you can never get that time back. So I think that investing into this is the ultimate sacrifice. Giving your time and knowledge is the only way to show how invested you truly are in whatever your craft is.
He lived his life to the fullest, with no regrets of anything, no fear. I don't think he had a fear of anything either, to be honest. If he did, he kept it to himself for the most part. At the end of the day, it was where it was in his blood, it was in his heart, and he kept going.
We thought that he was quiet. I thought he was quiet until his sister told me, Mom, he's not as quiet as you think he is. So what they saw at the football field, they saw outside playing in the games, was not what it's just as humble as he is when he's at home. He's just being a kid.
So when my mom used to be like, oh, he doesn't talk at school, he doesn't do this, I'm like, that's not the case. I watched him in the halls. He was the homecoming king. Like, he was not nearly as quiet as they think.
I think I was really amazed the first time that I saw him speak in public. I was truly amazed that this was the kid that we had that had a speech ailment.
Yeah.
Now I see him up on the stage and you could tell he was at home. When he got on stage, he was a totally different person. He was in his element, he was professional. Then when he walked off stage, he walked like out of that life back into being my son again.
So whatever it is that you choose to want to master, or whatever it is that chooses you, remember first that you have to define it, then you have to develop it, and lastly, you have to be willing to share it. You have to be willing to give it out.
He wanted to make sure everybody saw what he got to do, what he could do, and made sure that he taught everybody as well instead of keeping it all to himself. So I definitely think that's his legacy, is that he definitely didn't die with his gifts in his hands.
Don't test my math here, but probably, 20, 24-ish years, second grade. So, I mean, yeah, we played a lot of sports together growing up, baseball, middle school football. He ended up moving in with me for pretty much the remainder of high school. And so, I mean, it was really, at that point, it was kind of like we were brothers. I will cherish the 20 plus years we had together. I just thank you for being my friend, my best friend, my best bet.
In the locker room, the football name, he was B-Rod. So if you talk to any former coaches and players that played with him, it's B-Rod. He didn't have to be in the spotlight. That character shined whether he was in my presence, whether he was in his parents' presence, his fellow teachers. He was always who he said he would be. Once somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And that can be positive and negative. But in B-Rod's case, his character revealed itself. He was always, a happy-go-lucky kid. But when it was business, he attacked it. He had the right attitude, and those intangibles and those traits carried on. That's what made him successful here during his high school career, whether it be on the football field, the baseball field, or in the classroom. And then that's what made him successful in college and then in his career.
My craft allows me to build the things I love. But it didn't happen by accident, and it damn sure didn't happen overnight. It just happened by me taking the time to develop something that I saw potential in. The first step is to define whatever your craft is, right?
We all came down one weekend, a handful of us, from high school, and it was just, I think we all made the decision that weekend that we were going to Charlotte. So our first year we were not roommates. He lived in the engineering building with the different engineers. He was kind of like a math guy. He was kind of like his dad in that respect.
He went to school to be a civil engineer. That was his major when he started, but he didn't do too good at it.
Kind of stopped trying. I stopped giving it all my classes. I stopped going to classes. I blew a couple $1,000 extra in the process before really realizing that it wasn't something I wanted to do.
And I told him, it's like, son, don't be an engineer because your father's an engineer. Be an engineer because that's what you want to do.
I was lucky enough to stumble into a drawing class at the very beginning, and it kind of clicked for me.
Somehow he fell in love with art.
He was going to follow his passion, whatever it may be, whether it was drawing or print media or graphic design and then lettering, which is ultimately what he became known for. And whatever he was going to do was going to be 100%. He was going to do what he was going to do and do it full force. Print Magazine is a national journal for graphic design, one of the top publications in the country. This issue, the 15 under 30, where they do these small features about up-and-coming graphic designers. An issue such as this is something that all creatives would dream about, receiving that kind of recognition.
So much of what I saw after his passing was people talking about just how much they were inspired by him. How much they got into certain aspects of design, of art, of life in a way. People watched him and were moved. People watched him and were inspired.
He just worked on his abilities so much, was so focused on getting better all the time. He was always striving for the next level, and I think that's really what separates him more than a kind of maybe almost magical talent.
He had a job at Apple, right? He was part-time there. He was work-study, I believe, at the Union as a graphic designer. And then he was working on the Sanskrit project. So 3 solid things that were pulling him in different directions and finishing as a senior. So he had a lot going on. He was thinking ahead so much more than the rest of us. He just knew, I need to do this, I want to make an impression.
He was so modest about himself and his work, but then he would work to do the opposite for everybody else in a way, right, from a design community. That was just something that he would make time for.
He gave us an insight of what it took to put yourself out there and all the different adversities that he faced. I think Adé is one of the best hand lettering artists of our generation. I mean, that's who he was, and it showed.
He's probably one of the most unique people I've ever met. Between his name, multiple names, I guess, his personality, the way he approaches people, very good about making everyone seem like he's known them forever.
If you think back and look at his work, some of his sketchbooks have work he was doing in our classes, and I remember these drawings. It's good stuff, but what really was attracting other students to him was not these drawings, it was his personality, it was his heart. He just saw the good in things. He saw the bad in things. He was human, but he also would return to, the good in people, the good in things, the good in possibilities in projects.
I don't know anybody who met him, especially in a professional setting where they worked with him or collaborated with him, and didn't say that they love him. Just everyone who worked with him loved him. He just brought that energy and enthusiasm everywhere he went, and it was contagious.
Because I think sometimes when you're an artist, when we are helping one another, we are critiquing in a more negative way. He was always like helping you in a positive way to be the best version of yourself and not trying to change your project to mimic what he was doing, but to elevate who you were as an artist.
He was a good teammate. He was a captain, he was a leader. So that's the legacy that he leaves.
When he came back to visit, one of the things that's special in the exhibition is this jacket that he had custom made. And when he came back to visit, I said, "That's a really great looking jacket." And he said, "Well, you should put it on." And we had a whole classroom full of students, and he had me put it on, and he was like cheering me on again. It really speaks to how he was. He was like, "You look awesome in that. You should have that, not me." And he had the whole class like, you know, cheering for me, which was just kind of a almost ludicrous and silly moment. But it again spoke to that he wanted to bring life and energy to different situations.
His work was very classic and impactful, and you can see his dedication and his creation and the passion behind it. And because of that, you know, Adé is a true salt of the earth. That's what he was.
He would hate it if I was sitting right here crying like this. So I mostly just try to embrace his motive and goals and try to find, he always said, his uncle said this quote, "Find go." So I just try to embrace his drive and commitment to things. Find the joy.
Once I graduated, we lived together. He ended up saying, "Hey, I'm going to move to Chicago," and we were like, "Okay, I don't, you know, okay, we'll see, right?"
Moments like this, standing on the stage in front of you guys, are just the living proof of like how much I've grown, how much I've seen myself grow from a kid who didn't know really anything about art to be a full-fledged artist, to do it full-time for myself, to be in front of people, sharing my story. Sorry if anybody's disappointed by it, but fuck it, I had to tell it.
He sold everything that he had owned unless it fit in his car. And then he drove down to Chicago, and boy, oh boy, am I glad that that happened. It always felt like he had been here forever.
You know, I met Adé, probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I certainly can remember the day he walked into my office for the first interview we had. His process was different than a lot of young designers I see. I think for a lot of them, they default to their technology, right? What can my computer do? What does the software do? Adé was just different. He used his hands. His process was sketch. His process was sort of old school in that way. I mean, Adé and clients didn't always mix in the sense that, you know, they wanted one thing, they had expectations, and I think he always had a bigger vision for what he could do. And so he got tired of that reality here. And I think he always felt like he had more to share and more to give, didn't want the restrictions anymore on what that was. And we saw that afterward, what he did, where he went,
It all started with a blank canvas, a blank piece of nothing, right? And after a lot of time and work and effort, I've watched it develop, and I hope that everybody that's followed me along, you've watched it develop too.
I didn't know how much he meant to me until after he was gone. You know, and I think he had that impact on a lot of people.
I wasn't surprised when he decided to go off on his own. If anyone could do it, I feel like he could have at the time. He flourished on his own. I think it took him a little bit. I know there was some trials and tribulations at first. He really got life thrown his way, but that tenacity, that drive is a little bit unmatched, I think, in the people that I know. And if there's anyone who could have gone through the fire like that and came out the way he did, it's him. He's doing all this while also training for a triathlon. He's picking up a brand new sport like cycling and then becoming pretty dang good at it. He is, running marathons. It's in his art, in his athleticism, in his just way that he sustained friendships too throughout all this is just nothing short of spectacular. You throw the cycling, running, art, professional success all out the window. His greatest skill was connecting with people.
Real early, we got out there 6:30. We were riding down the lakefront, and he comes riding up towards us, does a U-E, and just lines up with us and finished out the ride with us. So I met him that day. Probably hung out with him for an hour and a half, and then I started seeing him maybe every week or so. I think people that met him once will think about him forever. So I think it's sort of how can you be a more personal human to the people you interact with. Maybe that's his legacy for me. How can you better interact with someone, even if it's for 5 minutes?
That he was very vulnerable, even in the public eye. He would let people know that, I don't feel like designing right now. Right now, the spark isn't there. I'm gonna take some time off. He did that not only on Instagram and social media, but with his friends too. He'd let you know, hey, I'm gonna go get a part-time job at a bike shop because right now art just isn't for me. And he did, and he did not care 1 second about how other people might, perceive that.
I feel like when he rolled in here, you kind of saw a bit of a spark. Even on those days when he was super tired, he'd been out riding the night before, or, went out and did a race the night before, the day before. Even with that feeling or that impression of low energy, it was still there. And I think it was also an energy that myself, and I would also include the rest of the group, the rest of the team, looked forward to every single day. We checked the schedule to make sure, okay, a day's gonna be their day, it's gonna be a good day,
I was just rolling by the store the day it opened. This was his grand opening day, and I noticed whoa, a bike shop. I wasn't intending on buying a bike. I wasn't, necessarily in the market. But yeah, I came in and, Adé, James was here, and it was kind of striking seeing two brothers in a space like this. What could be considered a high-end bike shop, and we went on a quick ride together. And since then, I got my bike that day, and that's when I kind of turned into a cyclist. We went on a ride together, and it was, it was fun. He had a childlike enthusiasm, for bikes, and that's something that kind of stays with me.
I told him I felt honored to watch this journey and see him sort of evolve and really see him find joy in cycling and wanting to share that with others. Wanting to change the cycling culture and making it a safer and more inclusive space for people of color and women. So I think those Friday morning rides, you can definitely still, you just saw him light up.
I cherished every moment where I'm on a bike with somebody else similar to me. Two black men on a bike, you know, rolling through the city. That's a memory that will never go away. That is 100% a core memory.
He was a cyclist for a while. I think it was like the last year and a half before his accident, he really got into it and got really serious about it. But he just had an overall excitement for life.
Before I even knew what the project was with Alaska Airlines, I was just like, yo, dude, you're designing a plane. I don't know if there's a hierarchy of like artists' accomplishments, but I feel like designing a plane is up there.
I have to start by saying I've been here 17 years, and these 17 years we've had a lot of great moments at Alaska Airlines, but I think I'm going to put this near the top.
You know, I remember when it happened, I was like, I didn't even know you could design the size of an airplane. Like, I didn't know there was a thing you could achieve in life. And clearly he impacted a lot of people to get there and even afterwards.
Well, we unleashed the creativity of our people, our employees, and our wonderful marketing team that's here. And we said, go create something that will always be a symbol of our commitment and what we're all about at Alaska and our values that will be with us for at least 10 years. And this is what they came up with.
This is not just something that we're doing as a response to what's happening in the world, but this is truly who we are at Alaska. He took inspiration from civil rights protest posters from the late 1960s to inform how he created the shapes of these letters. The way that letters look when they're all put together into a design impacts how you feel about that design.
Him being able to translate what our employees were feeling and asking our organization for, and what our leaders felt like we wanted to communicate to our employees and to the people who fly, beautifully seamless with the silhouettes on the side, really speaks to his dedication and his talent.
It was so exciting just to see the people smile, the awe factor that they had with it. It's committed to let everybody be somebody.
UNCF and Alaska have had a partnership for so long as well, for 15 years. It's a very important relationship, and I think this really showcases it.
We are serious about this commitment, and this aircraft is a representation. This, what I call, is a flying billboard of hope.
This is a gift that he gave away to thousands of people every day who get to experience this plane as it flies across the country.
Every time that plane goes across the sky, my son continues to live. He lives.
Seeing a plane that is, one, painted black, but also has black faces painted on it, is something that's crazy. It's striking. It looks totally different than every other plane you see on the tarmac. So I'm not even sure what it means yet. And I don't think I'm going to fully grasp it or understand it until I see it in the sky.
It's magnificent. It's historic. It's going to be long-standing.
We want to do better. We want to move forward in the future, making sure that we are giving the same opportunities to people who look like us. There's one foot in and there's one foot out, but they don't want to put both feet in. They say, we want to do this, we don't know how, or we want to do this, but this is not a but. This is, we want to do this, and we did it, and now we're moving forward.
This morning, a white bicycle is chained near Grand and Lower DuSable Lakeshore Drive. It's a memorial for Adé Hogue, who died Friday after he was hit and killed while riding his bike.
Yeah, I was at work, working on the machine. I remember my cousin from Cecil from DC called me. He didn't say, hey, Ben, hey, how you doing? You having a good day? Or kind of the normal. It was like, Ben, do you have a pen and a piece of paper? That was his first thing to me. I was like, yeah, I do. He's like, you need to take this number down. There's a doctor in Chicago that needs to talk to you. He's like, your son been hit. He has a severe head injury, and we don't know if he'll make it through the night. And I remember standing at a machine and felt like everything in me just went out. The next thing I remember thinking about was, how am I gonna call his mother and tell her that her son may not make it through the night?
As I was approaching him and while I was around him, there was some kind of like spiritual presence, and that was undeniable. And I just remember thinking to myself, oh man, I don't know who this guy is, but somebody is really protecting him. He had a presence even in his complete stillness.
I thought I had processed it pretty well, but it's still pretty raw. You know, just trying to look back on everything, you know, on all of those memories and understand we won't be growing old together, but we had a long friendship.
It's a void that's missing in our family that can't be replaced. It can't be replaced. And to continue every day with people doing things, it's almost like reliving it every day. But you want to live it because it keeps him alive.
I just felt him, you know? A lot of times I like to do things that make me feel closer to him, and that was a thing that made me feel really close to him, just touching the letters that he worked so hard on. I just want them to know that he did everything in life to the fullest of its ability. Like, who knew that this was something you could do, and yet he achieved it? You know, who knew that a little kid from Asheville could go to Chicago and be such a big deal? You know, he kind of laid everything out on the line always, and this is just an example of another way he did it. So I just want everybody to continue to lay everything out on the line, live life to its fullest, and don't hold back.
He was a leader in so many ways, and you know, I want young students of color who come to our program to look to him as an example of like, look what's possible.
It's like I'm really fortunate, like the time that I had with him. And also like the way he touched, you know, everyone else, like students, families, friends. It just like left a big hole in like Chicago, just yeah, for the creative community.
We continue to carry his legacy. And as one of his favorite rappers, Nipsey Hussle, said, the marathon continues. And he's definitely our rose that grew from concrete. And we're gonna continue to keep doing everything that we can to make sure that other little brown boys and girls get that opportunity.
I just want people to know that although he was this huge figure that did these huge things like Alaska Airlines and all these big ticket items, like at the end of the day, he was just my brother. Like, so it just, like, to me, he wasn't that. He wasn't Adé, really. Like, we didn't even call him Adé. That was a Chicago thing, because when he was home, he was just Broderick. He was just kind of one of us laying on the couch playing games all day, singing very off-key. So I just want everybody to know that he was more than just what he did.
I just like to tell people how proud I am of a father. Like I said, I think I said this before, most people don't get this opportunity to say that your kid did so well in life. I'm proud of him. I tell the world how proud of him. I tell everybody that you wish you had a son like I had.